Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this particular session of the IRS-10, which is under the theme of digital innovation, where we are specifically looking at how we can possibly accelerate the digitalization of infrastructure. For those listening to what Gianluigi Castelli was saying in his opening remarks just now. Digitalization of the infrastructure, in fact, digitalization of the railway system, is a very important driver for being able to revitalize and recover the railway system from the current situation in which we all find ourselves. A very, very illustrious panel of speakers, and in this particular session, I'm delighted to introduce. In no particular order, but Rolf Hardy, who is the Chief Technical and Innovation Officer for Innovation and New Technologies at Deutsche Bahn in Germany. I'm also delighted to be able to welcome Martin Mason, who is the Director of Predictive Maintenance at Network Rail. Also Thomas Böhm, who is the Head of Product at Connex, who, as you will see, are sponsoring this particular session. And also, and I'm sorry, Alicia, I'm going to get your name wrong now, because I'll let you introduce your family name a little later on, because I really don't want to make a fool of myself if I can possibly avoid it. Some people say I make a fool of myself all the time, but never mind. But I'd like to stop all of that chit chat and hand over now to Rolf Hardy, who is Swiss by birth, but has had an engineering background with and companies like ABB, and been in the sector for a considerable amount of time, but has been most recently with Deutsche Bahn since 2017, and someone that we've come to appreciate, because he also was the chairman of our safety platform at the UIC for a period of time as well. He's going to give us a bit of an overview of his perception of the program that Deutsche Bahn is undertaking in this particular field. Rolf, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you ever so much, Simon, and thank you for having me. It's a great honor and pleasure to present here. I'll start with a quick introduction, very quick, on Deutsche Bahn. Yes, next slide, please. Sorry, I forget it's me controlling the session. Okay. So quick introduction of Deutsche Bahn. We are a fully integrated provider, having trains and infrastructure. You will see here some of the figures. I will not bore you with those figures, but we're probably not the smallest railway provider within Europe. And of course, digitalization is a big challenge to us, and we do believe that digitalization is the way forward, and we have focused on that. And although we're talking about infrastructure, I like to point your attention to the overall picture. We strongly believe that you have to look at digitalization in a more coherent way, and that this is how we're approaching it. So we're looking at the entire ecosystem and how can we optimize that using digitalization. And you see here some examples right through the entire value chain. And what we're also doing is we are approaching the so-called four-quadrant approach, which basically means infrastructure is controlling infrastructure. Infrastructure is controlling vehicles. Vehicles are controlling vehicles themselves, and vehicles are controlling infrastructure. By that, and connecting everything to one virtual network and information lake, we approach digitalization. And everything we do based on use cases. For instance, one example, you definitely see later on, Connex is also in this session. We're just implementing 3,000 switches, additional switches, where we do condition-based monitoring with artificial intelligence on that. Hello?
Yes, it seems like you've the screen has gone off.
Yeah. Can I have the presentation back, please?
There you go.
Okay. Here we are. Great. Okay. We have started a strategy, and in this strategy, which is very coherent, we're focusing on technologies. So together with the sector, we are pushing those technologies forward, having projects together with the industries. We are piloting digital twins. We're looking into artificial intelligence, very much on ATO, ETCS, and so on and so on. So there are 18 technologies we are pushing very hard, and what we call 10 foundations is also technologies which more a foundation character, like connectivity, cloud services. We have, in the meantime, 100% of our IT is in the cloud. So we are pushing these technologies in 6 distinctive use cases you see here on the top, from digital rail operation to digital maintenance to digital customer experience. Again, having this coherent approach. What we also do is, especially to test the efficiency of the infrastructure with digitalization, in the 4-quadrant system, we're having a dedicated test train where we can test the effectiveness of the interaction between infrastructure and the trains. This is a 605 ICE train, diesel. It can go anywhere. We actually been driving through Berlin the other week, believe it or not. Here you see we're testing camera systems. We're testing all sorts of sensory communication, alternative propulsion systems, and so on. And this has proven very valuable to do. Because we do enable all the industries and the startups that are coming to that to test the systems in live conditions. And we do believe this is a way to accelerate digitalization quite a bit. This is a concrete project we're doing in Hamburg. This is going to be the first fully automated S-Bahn. We actually want to go live this year, where we have a pilot line of 23 kilometers, and we have modernized 4 vehicles, and that will fully operate autonomous. We still have drivers in the cab for safety reasons, but will be the first implementation of a fully automated S-Bahn Deutsche Bahn is doing, and we're quite excited about it, and the project is on track, and it really looks good at the moment. And we, of course, you can do all sorts of pilots, but on the end of the day, you have to invest, and we are in a fortunate position where we can invest in infrastructure projects. This is right across the entire spectrum, but you see here some of the figures. We invest in 108 billion euros of projects. We do expand the lines in order to make sure we have all the capacity we need. We do have over 46 projects under construction, and alone in 2019 to 20, same figure actually. We do spend 2 million every year. So we are really in a implementation modus where we're going to implement infrastructure projects, and all these projects will have a focus to complete this digital plan we have foreseen. What we also do, since actually quite a few years, we're working intensively together with startups. What you see here is just a selection. So please do not disappointed if your name doesn't appear on it. Actually, in the meantime, we are collaborating with more than 100 startups. Cornux, for instance, was a startup a few years back where we started having first trials, and now it has become a supplier of Deutsche Bahn. But we do strongly believe that there's so many good ideas out there, especially in the digital world, where those startups need a good partnership. Somebody helps them to translate the idea into a final product which is going to pass all the safety regulations and all the authorities. And this is really what we are focusing on, and together in this coherent approach with startups, with the spirit, pushing digitalization forward. And that would end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening patiently.
Rolf, thank you very much indeed for that overview, that rapid overview with your high-speed trains featuring large in the presentation about how what the work you're doing, and hopefully we can come back to an element of that perhaps later on. We have a little bit of a panel opportunity later on, so perhaps we can come back to that. That'd be fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Now, just before I introduce Thomas for his presentation, we have a little poll because one of the things we want to do is to be as interactive as we can during this event. And so if Sajani, you could show the poll, please. And this is for everyone to have a go at. And the question is, which do you consider to be the biggest challenges for infrastructure managers and railway operators? Is it to make new technology operational, prove a positive business case with new technology, implement process changes, or hire and keep the staff required? And if you could all, you've got about 30 seconds, if you could all answer that question now, that would be very helpful. Because that will then enable us to think about some of the things that you out there are thinking of as well. And then meanwhile, what I'd like to do is just introduce us to Thomas, who is, as we've already said, the head from Conux, who are sponsoring this particular session, and Thomas is the head of product. And Rolf described you as a startup a few years ago, and what my thought immediately was, well, we all have to start somewhere, and so that's a fabulous. But it's fabulous that you've been able to develop the product and develop the company, and of course, with your insight, technical knowledge and insight, it's interesting to be able to have organisations that can zoom in on a particular issue. And it was interesting that you've also been involved in German aerospace DLR. That's another organisation we know very well because they're very much involved in railway technological projects. Thomas is going to give us a bit of an overview of what Conux is doing in order to help to speed up or to accelerate infrastructure digitalization. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome everybody, also from my side. I'm happy today to speak to you about actionable insights easier, the Conux predictive maintenance system for railway switches. We at Conux strongly believe that a lasting change in railway can only be achieved if we put railway first. And we're doing this by integrating the deep railway knowledge in our development, in everything we think about, and fuse it with artificial intelligence and Internet of Things. So unlike a horizontal player, where you have different technologies that you try to apply to different industries, we're vertically exclusively serving the railway industry and doing so quite successfully. I know that's not an approach for everyone, but for us, it has turned out to be that path to success. You can see this year we have over 50 million train passages recorded. We are deployed in 10 countries, and among those countries, there are some of the most innovative and advanced infrastructure managers you can find, like Deutsche Bahn, as said in the beginning by Rolf, but also Infrabel, Trafficwerket, and so on. And we're now collecting data for more than 4 years. And this is what fuels our product and what helps us to digitize. And of course, we're here because we have a mission. Our mission is to make railway the mobility choice of tomorrow by increasing capacity, reliability, and cost efficiency. And we're not saying that we do this alone. but for sure, we want to be the driver for this and helping very much to achieve that mission. But when you look at the demand, passenger kilometers will grow almost double until 2050. Freight train demand or freight demand is not far behind this. So the question is then, how can infrastructure deal with that high demand for mobility? And digitalization is supposed to help and pave the way for this increase of demand, for this increase of capacity, reliability, and so on and so on. But also we see that is not as easy as maybe thought in the beginning. And as the poll already reflected with the answers, is that, yeah, you have some challenges. And most of you answered, 54% answered to the question, what is the biggest challenge for infrastructure managers and railway operators? Implementing process changes. So it's not just done with a technology, it's not just done with an algorithm, it's really when it comes towards the user, when it's part of their process that has changed towards a digital process. Because the human will still be in that system. And that's why we have built this software as a service system, our predictive maintenance system, and I will tell you in a few seconds what it does, is deployed in a switch, and it's capable of improving the availability of switches by up to 45%, reducing OPEX by up to 30%, with optimizing maintenance, especially optimizing the inspections, so how much and when we do inspections, and increasing the asset lifetime by telling you much more targeted when to maintain and what do and what not to do. So how does it work? We applied AI and industrial Internet of Things to deliver a first software as a service predictive maintenance solution for switches. And that means we deliver an insight. We deliver the condition about the system in the hands of maintainers. And everything else, taking care of the system, taking care of the hardware and so on, is done by us. That means we deploy our own autonomous and fully railway certified system into the infrastructure right on the sleeper at the crossing of a switch. And there it measures every train, the acceleration of every train, sends this data to the cloud where the intelligence is, where it's the home of the intelligence. And from that acceleration, we derive many, many insights that we then either visualize via the user interface or provide via an API directly, as I said, in the hands of our customers. And here we had earlier seen in the presentation from Rolf talking about smart standardization as one of his key things. And smart standardization does not mean, for example, in this integration discussion, it does not mean that we provide our own UI or that we just deliver a few data points. With the data comes context. And that context is relevant and is valuable to the users itself. So it's not just done by, here's a measurement value that is now digitally available. No, it comes with context, with the ability to reason about the data, with support of the system. And then we use this context and this data together to monitor the switches, detect anomalies, predict failures, prescribe maintenance, and even validate the maintenance. So our system, as you can see here, has seen many things. Very hot temperatures, very cold temperatures, all kind of different switches in traffic. And it really has proven that we now covered a lot of corner cases and edge cases that initially we never thought of, but are now part of our product and are part of this constant innovation that we're doing. As software as a service, one advantage is that you can easily deploy updates and deploy learning to all customers. One thing that we started on right in the beginning was measuring the vertical displacement, so of a sleeper, voids underneath the sleeper, and how much it moves when the train is passing. And you may wonder, okay, this is one small aspect. What has it to do with availability of the switch? And why is it so important? This is one example. where despite us knowing the displacement and the moving when the train is passing, all of a sudden we recorded a lot of very unusual signals. And we informed the customer, who went out with an inspection team and said, yeah, it's no wonder, because here you see it, the clamps that are fixing the sleeper towards the rail are missing. In fact, they're lying here left and right to the sleeper. And they confirmed that this is not the first time it happened, but until now, they could not be sure why it comes, because when they're there and inspecting the switch, the trains, the high-speed trains, this is a high-speed line where trains go 250 kilometers per hour over the switch, they were never present when the train is passing. So now they know the root cause and they can fix it. So it was not only that we measure the displacement, but that we also look in the data for anomalies and detect things that were unusual. We added this case to our, let's say, catalog of things we can find in order to prevent it happening in the future. But there's other aspects too that we derive from this. I mentioned earlier that we record each train. So we also can see what happens after maintenance, for example, temping. And when you ask our customers, what do you do today to know that maintenance was successful? We got interesting answer. Probably one of the most interesting answers is this one: today, you hope. And there is something we can change in here. And we've built a feature that is monitoring the quality of tamping by saying, okay, was it initially successful? So means it has improved the situation of voided sleepers. And then over a period of time, is the settlement and development still deemed to be successful? And this we use to identify and change how maintenance is first initiated, but also how it is looked afterwards as performance and how well it worked and in which situations it did not work. So we looked at more than 100 tamping actions that we have seen with our system, and surprisingly, only 15% of those were still effective after 2 months, meaning that they had reached at least 50% in reduction of voiding below 3 millimeters and sustained this for more than 60 days. So that means there's 85% of inefficient activities, and they're not cheap. Of course, you can argue machine tamping, like you can see here, is also done for different reasons, to align the track, to align the geometry. Nonetheless, we have manual tamping. They were most often in these cases has been done without a necessary cost and rely very much on the experience of maintenance people that are there for 25, 30 years that assess the situation. But still you can see that a data-driven approach might give you much more efficiency. And in fact, in this, the manual tamping events that were done while the condition was still very good, each of those is not necessary, but costs you at least 2,500 euros. And here is data that you can use to better pinpoint when to do it and what to do. Another thing is, and I mentioned this earlier, that we see every train, and we also see what kind of train it was, how fast this train was going, and how heavy it was. So we have the load information. And today, maintenance and inspections is still based on a projected load. And most of our customers don't have any way to really assess what kind of load went over the network or specific assets. And of course, you can take data from operational side, but is the data that the freight operator gives you how heavy the train is really how heavy the train was? And do you get the speed of the train at a particular site in the infrastructure? And think of it: speed, train type, load, and environment are the 4 factors that drive degradation of the network. And we can cover 3 of those, helping you to understand better where to focus on. And that's why we built a load factor that incorporates these 3 things. in order to better give insights on when to do something or where to focus on. And you see here in this example, the top 4 assets are all in the same load category. So they're all equally treated in terms of maintenance and inspection. But there's a huge difference. The top asset number 19 has 152 trains per day, all going at high speed. While the asset number 2, the third in this table, has only 125 trains, and it's more towards light passenger trains and high-speed trains as a mix. So this is probably 2/3 of the load that asset number 19 has, but they're still treated the same way. And once you know more precisely what load is on your asset and how it is linked to degradation, you can get away from a fixed time schedule. You can say, I want to have so many load cycles, or I want to have so many degradation before I go there and do something. You would still be able to keep the same safety case and the same safety scenarios as you have today. You're just more tailored to the individual asset. So these are things where you can see that it directly helps the digitalization, and what you do with data and how you support different use cases at a user can help you. But there's also more to this. The system can make the work safer, healthier, more attractive. The forecast that we can provide with a 90-day outlook, it helps to reduce short notice action, meaning that you have less people that are on demand for repair. You have less night shifts, which makes the work itself more attractive and also more healthy to the people. Reducing inspections, reducing failures is less time on the track, and it's less time that you spend for routine checks that you can spend for actually repair or improving the network. And of course, I mentioned the example of maintenance quality check. There you have a tool that helps you to speed up the onboarding of new people. They don't need a 20-year, 30-year experience to assess what to do and when to do. So they're up to speed, they're up to a level of quality much faster. And you have to remember that most of the very experienced working workforce will soon retire. And that knowledge needs to carry over to the next generation. So there's a lot of things that within that small use case of a switch and measuring acceleration, we were able to build and to support. And we are, of course, hoping that we can do much more in the future. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you very much indeed for that insight into some of the detailed work that you're doing in this particular area. And I think with any luck, in a few moments we'll be able to have the opportunity to come back to some of those points. I think, and in particular, you've mentioned a couple of things related to how you perceive railways being the mobility choice of tomorrow, and that resonates very nicely. But also you talked about people as well, and understanding the people and technology mix, I think, is something that we could perhaps explore in a moment or two. What I'd like to do now is if I may, just to introduce to you now, ladies and gentlemen, Martin and Alicia. But Alicia is going to give us a little bit of an overview on the role of Event-10th, and she'll tell us what her family name is, because as I said before, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. But it's also understanding, Alicia, I think how Event-10th as being a market leader in what you do, how you're contributing through that to this digital revolution, shall we say, of the railway system. Over to you.
Thank you, Simon, a lot. Of course, good morning to everyone. And my surname is Strzemiczna. It's a typical Polish name, many Polish name. It's very not easy to pronounce. So it's okay. Just Alicia, everybody knows me like Alicia. I think that it's important to all of you to understand few words about Advantech, who we are at the beginning. Because still Advantech is not so well-known company in Europe. So we are a global company with 2 billion USD revenue and 8,000 employees worldwide. We are Taiwan-based, but we are presented in each country of Europe. We have a network and offices in every country. And if anybody asks you to describe your own company, to draw it by the pencil, for me, I will draw the Advantech as an umbrella. Advantech is a solution enabler, a driving global approach with local touch, because local touch is the most important because this high importance of local services. Under this umbrella, we have our partners, software vendors, solution providers, integrators, and many others. So from one side, we as Advantech, our main business core, this is a production of industrial computers, sensors, switches, routers, edge computers, different kind of IoT technology, high computers for artificial intelligence applications. And from another side, we this enabler of newest technology to make the most innovation ideas to happen. I would say we have a couple of important parts of this digitalization process. We work with our partners in the infrastructure sector. For me, it will be very difficult to describe it in 1-2 minutes about one application. So what I can do, I can count and name different kinds of applications, what we already did in many countries. And if you have any questions, any ideas later, just come back to me and ask. So, of course, from today's situation, because of the COVID, the most important applications are based on digital inspectors that have AI technology for post-COVID situation. So, measuring social distance, mouse protection on the stations in the carriage, real-time visibility of passenger flow, keeping security processing very quick, but also making holistic decision on how to create more efficient and more meaningful customer experience. Important what we worked right now, it's already implemented in few airports. This is assets and object detections by anonymization. So this is GDPR compliancy. This technology opens up interesting opportunities for many as it allows for more efficient use of visual data and the ability to fully leverage its benefit. For example, passenger predictability technology or 5G connectivity application. This is what we are doing more and more. And we are working with a few important partners in Europe to develop 5G in railway. Intelligent CCTV. For example, our switches has very good recommendation for no delay in transmitting images from the cameras. IoT related to people and passengers, safe public passenger transportation, real-time visibility information platforms, also real-time passenger information system, AI application in railway, in cargo transportation, like intelligent locomotives to improve the efficiency. What else is important? Touchless economy. This trend is provide existing services without human contact. So like payment, validations, orders. Personalized passenger information system. This trend is to provide real-time information available on all passenger devices like phones or laptops. Infrastructure block cooperation. They are not working isolated as before. different kind of AI platform like incident detector or video surveillance system. So you can find a lot of information on our website to see what kind of solutions we are doing. We are focusing more and more on AI technology. And together with our partners, also in Germany, in Netherlands, in Poland, we have many success stories in many countries in different applications. So thank you. That's all for me.
Alicia, thank you very much indeed for that insight into some of the work you're doing. And indeed, one of the, as we know already, one of the themes of this event this year is about digitalization and how important it is, very important to this. I'd like to bring in Martin and indeed Thomas and Rolf as well, if we may, just to all join in for this little session here. But Martin, bearing in mind that we haven't heard from you at all in this session so far, perhaps I can turn to you for the first and just ask Martin, why is accelerating digitalization of infrastructure so important to the railway, and perhaps also in particular to your company, Network Rail, where you are the director of predictive maintenance?
From my perspective, there's many factors of why we want to turn the data we collect into intelligence. So in Network Rail, we're very data rich. We're not necessarily that intelligence rich. So digitization and all the great stuff Thomas talked about, which is we're looking to go to now, which we call decision support tools, which is using intelligence from digitization to present our operatives with the ability to have foresight, be less reactive and move to proactive maintenance. It's about reducing people on track. So if we can use inspections, photographs, train-borne monitoring to reduce people's contact with the way, and that safety element, that's always a driver. Reduction in delays to passengers. So Thomas talked about predicting switch failures. We do a lot of work in that space, and it's about being able to not only keep the railway safe, right, but it's about passing on the efficiencies to the passengers through managing assets better, reducing service affecting failures, and then obviously whole life costs and renewal. So COVID's obviously changed the way we are. There's less passengers at the moment. Freight's obviously becoming more important. So having the intelligence that we glean from all the great stuff Thomas and Rolf and Alicia talked about gives us that ability to plan ahead rather than be reactive. And I think that's, from my perspective, where I'm around predictive maintenance. It's about using that intelligence then to facilitate all the stuff we've talked about. So, you know, it's really interesting the way we also, when Thomas was presenting, we look at assets in silos a lot historically in railways. Yeah, so we have track, we have signalling, we have, you know, EMP, electrification and plant. But where we're moving to in Network Rail is we're looking at cross-discipline management of assets as systems. So Thomas touched on P2F curves around switches and crossings, and we're trying to look at those assets as a holistic environment, because you have weather, you have geometry inputs, you have POE, you have power. So we're trying to take all of those little elements that Thomas talked about from different disciplines, different data streams, to build them to look at cross-system failure. So it might not necessarily be the track discipline that needs to do the work to stop the failure, as an example. And that's where we're moving to now, is more cross-system P2F curves, and using that digital data to then infer how we best manage things as a system rather than in a silo.
And Martin, in terms of that, in terms of the data that you're gathering, this is typically what kind of data? This is to do with metal stressing or
we
weather?
have loads of data coming in. So we have obviously geometry, track geometry. We have rail management data sets about side wear, rail profile. We have weather. We have drainage information. We have our plain line pattern recognition trains around doing track patrols essentially within the forefoot. So it's taking all of those data feeds around OLE, heights and staggers, yeah, and aligning them together to understand obviously when you're running a train down track, it's impacting the rails, it's impacting the sleeper, the embankments, as well as the overhead line equipment. And it's how, like Thomas and Rolf talked about, vehicle interaction with those things, speeds and everything else, how you can bring all those data together to give intelligence of managing that as a system, not just necessarily the impact on track alone, but the impact of all of those things or the environment bring together. I always call it holistic work bank planning, which is planning, maintenance and renewals without a siloed hat on.
Okay, Martin. Martin, yes, thank you very much indeed for. We are there's a bit of a break in the connection between us and you. I'm not sure whether that's. Never mind. I mean, no, we're getting the message. It's fine. Could I just then highlight? We just before, in between Rolf and Thomas, we asked the audience a question in relation to the answer that came out. I have to say, not a huge survey, as it were, because there were only, I think, 18 responses. But head and shoulders amongst those 18 responses was to implement process change. Now, quite importantly, where you are with organisations like Conux and Event-10th, it's important that the processes that are being developed or that need to be managed within the railway community can be greatly helped by the equipment and so on, the products and what have you that you are developing. But I'd like first, if I may, Rolf, just to ask you how important implementing process change is and how perhaps you can give us a flavour of the kind of or a couple of examples of how you're implementing process change in order to help with this evolution of the railway system.
Yes, I think it's a very good point, and I do share that view that probably in the digitalization we always focus on the technical side, and there is this. Yes, we have a lot of data, we can do a lot of analysis, but then actually convert that knowledge into real action is a real challenge, and it is through the process. And we have some very concrete examples in Deutsche Bahn where that is happening. For instance, we learn a lot about our points or switches. It depends how you call it. For instance, we're just implementing a monitoring on the heating. So we have been in a situation where we can predict the weather, and then we switch on the heating on the switches according to the weather, and therefore save a lot of energy. But our contracts with the energy provider is on a fixed basis, annual fee. It's a simple thing, but we have to change the process. Then if you use the data to go into condition-based maintenance, you have to adapt the regulations and also how people are working. And it is really a challenge, even though people are very open to it. How do we approach it? By doing pilots. I think our experience is don't do the big thing. Make a huge map of every process and then data. Do it step by step. Start in a region. Start with a small process, and then implementing that in an incremental basis. Learn how to deal with the data. Give the people a chance to adapt, and then scale that to other parts of the organization or other systems, so to speak.
That's a bit like the English expression about not trying to eat the elephant whole, because indeed you have to make sure that you are doing it in a stepwise manner. And I think important, perhaps Martin, you can comment as well about the people issue here, because I think it's very important as well, where you do need to have or ensure that when you're introducing new technology, you are bringing the people with you, because it's at the end of the day, despite all of this wonderful tech that we're putting into the railway system, we still need boots on the ground, as it were. And I think bringing the people along in this kind of what sort of things do you do inside Network Rail, for example? And then maybe I'll turn to Alicia and Thomas to give us an insight on this people issue as well.
Can you hear me now,
Yes.
Simon?
Yeah.
Business change is critical for rolling out any technological change to our operatives. So it's very much, I call it arm round the shoulder. And Ralph's right. You start very small with a proof of concept, you then move to a prototype and then pilot or a go live in a smaller area. But the arm round the shoulder is key. A lot of the people we work with in the rail industry 30, 40 years, I think Ralph touched on it. The local knowledge is key to how they manage a section. So they're very adverse to using a laptop over a piece of paper. So the arm round the shoulder is key, and also capturing the requirements from the people on the company. So what they need, they will tell you, and it's being able to then build that in to the product and make sure that they feel part of the journey all the way through, from the inception right through to delivering a national rollout. And I think if you get that right, adoption won't be a problem. If you get the business change wrong, you're always fighting against or trying to swim upstream with the end users.
And I think it's important also to make sure that in the way you've just described, what you're doing is you actually generate a sense of ownership from amongst the people who are going to have to make this work at 3 o'clock on a wet Sunday morning, which is always when the railway goes wrong, when there's nobody else around.
100%.
At least in my humble 40 years of experience. Thomas, in terms of the railway, in terms of the technology that you are developing, and I am absolutely certain that you will tell us that you take obviously the people interface into account, making sure that what the solutions you are generating are going to have an impact, or at least a positive impact on the daily life of the individuals. Can you perhaps elaborate a little more on how you follow that thought process through?
Yeah. So there's often the term used of user-centric development as part of this, but we're really trying to get in each phase of a product development, from the discovery, when you talk about the problem that you actually want to solve, and the problem always comes first. There's not a technology that say, oh, I have this technology, what do I do? No, you talk to the users and the customer, and you talk about what kind of problem do they have and how can you solve this. And there's the first touch, and it also requires the researchers, the engineers, the software developer to be part of this discussion, because they're carrying on their business problem throughout the process until there's a final product. We have then the validation of the concept, so where you have mock-ups, where you have maybe something like a small MVP, so minimal viable product, that you try to bring in front of the users and talk to them. And then, of course, there's development, but there's a critical step in here where all the data, in our case, and the use cases that you want to bring in front of the users, that you ask them what they would use and how they would use it. So when is the right time? What would they actually do? What's the next step after they use the data? So to integrate there, and that's why I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this vertical integration. We have many platforms on the customer side that are integrating data left and right, and they're doing something. And so we don't want to add another UI, but we need a certain space in that platform, also a visual space to do this, to talk to the users. We know the context of our data, of our product, and we want to talk to the user and then build this whole product that needs to get integrated. And there it requires some freedom, and not just saying, okay, here's a platform, you ship your data, and you're completely walled off from the user. And we also don't want to say, here's what we build, so no, use it, go ahead. But it's really an integrated part, and that's how we're tackling this. And I also see that more and more of the railway companies, the infrastructure managers, following that same thought process. And that is a good example with accelerated innovation program.
And I think it's very important. I'm sorry to be labouring the point about people when it. No, I'm not sorry, but I mean we are labouring this point about people when we're talking about digitalisation of the railway system. But I mean there are people out there who are very afraid for the fact that this whole sort of wave of digitalisation is going to come in and cut out great chunks of people's employment, and people are going to be left on the shelf, and it's all going to be done by robots and all that sort of thing. And we have to demystify some of that. And I know that in Event-10th, Alicia, you've got some products and so on, some solutions which you've identified and developed. How do you bring along the people that are going to be using these products as part of the development process?
Yeah, it's a very wide topic, Simon. I think that the most important right now after a pandemic situation is when passengers will come back to trains is to keep them informed. And to keep them informed, it means that there are many kinds of application and passenger information system in train, out of train, how we can implement one central management system which will be based on artificial intelligence. So it will be like a feeling not to provide too many informations, but to do it in a very efficient way, to know who and where. So we implemented it already in Czech Republic, for example, in some other countries where you come to train and you have different kinds of models. And all these models are implemented on one central management platform. So everything we are talking about this technology is for passengers. So yeah, it's everything about it.
Okay, I mean, and they of course are people, and even it doesn't matter how much we automate the railway system, we will still be carrying people and goods,
Exactly.
And people in particular. We've got only a couple of minutes left on this chat, lady and gentlemen. One question to each of you, starting with Rolf. We know a lot about 5G. Well, we think we know a lot about 5G. Very briefly, one sentence, if you possibly can. How is that going to impact the railway?
It's going to have a major impact because it's going to help us to take the next step of needed communication within all our assets.
Thank you, Martin.
For me, it's about operatives being able to have access to data anywhere at speed. So at the moment, obviously, certain parts of the UK, you're not going to get 3G, let alone 5G. Having that ability means that it's accessibility to everyone, regardless of where they are. And if we can get that speed rolled out across the UK, then the products we build are available on site at any time of the day.
Thank you.
With the intelligence at your hand.
Thank you, Martin. Thomas.
Yeah, for me, it's availability and throughput of data, that you can deploy sensors everywhere and get the data in almost real time. Big challenge, a big change. Yeah.
They say data is the new oil. And last but not least, Alicia.
I think that when COVID will finish, we don't know when. Nobody knows. It can be 2 years. It could be more. People will be afraid to come back just like this to travel by trains, because they will feel more comfortable in cars, more safe, and they will feel more faster in airs, in planes. So for trains, I think it's the most important is services and new technologies. So everything about how to bring passengers back, to attract them more and more, to make them safe, to feel them safe. So services can be based only on the new technologies, based on artificial intelligence.
Alicia, thank you very much indeed for that insight. And I would draw your and everybody else's attention to the fact that at 1 o'clock we have the session about recovery from COVID. And I believe your managing director, Alicia, is speaking in that particular panel as well about recovery from COVID as well. And I would encourage you all to listen into that, because it might be quite an interesting opportunity. Thank you very much indeed for your input, your contributions to this particular session. I would say just out there to the people who are listening to us on this event that you, unfortunately, there were no questions from the audience, but I think we've managed to avoid any nasty gaps in this process by having a little chat amongst ourselves, and that was really very pleasant. Thank you very much indeed. And so, Rolf, Martin, Thomas, Alicia, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of the day and tomorrow and the day after, of course, assuming that you're dipping in and out of the event. And now, if I may, ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to remind you that the next event will start at 10:30. And this is a recorded interview, which will be regarding, again, a topic that we've just been talking about. It's about data and making sure that we understand how we use raw data in particular. So I encourage you to jump across now to that particular stage and to dip into that particular discussion as well. But meanwhile, thank you very much, and see you all very shortly.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Simon.
Bye.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.